This conference
Good
will now
afternoon,
be
everyone.
recorded.
Our today's speaker is Dr. Kinnari Thakkar. You all know, if you are joining from first day, she is from Department of Commerce, University of Mumbai. Welcome, ma'am. Welcome a lot. I would like to ask Rena Chandika to introduce ma'am. Rena, over to you.
Oh, ma'am. Thank you so much. Good afternoon to everyone. On this side of screen, Mrs. Rena Chandika, BAF Coordinator of Mathushri K.M. Patel College of Commerce and Science. Today, we are on third day of six-day faculty development program on a journey to research. Today in webinar series, we shall learn about research methodology, design, sampling techniques, measurement, and scaling. To make all of us learn and enjoy about the pleasant way of enriching session, we have with us CMA Dr. Kinnari Thakkar. I feel honored to introduce her as resource person for today and also would like to share with you all a glimpse of her success story. Ma'am is head of Department of Commerce, University of Mumbai. Talking about her academics, ma'am is a gold medalist from Mumbai University for MCOM. Also, she's MBA, company secretary, cost and management accountant, and doctor of philosophy. She has rich 21 years experience of teaching. She's a proud recipient of Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Award for Teaching Excellence 2018 and also Shiksha Ratna Puraskar for her meritorious performance in the field of teaching. Ma'am has authored 11 books in the subject of accountancy and finance and contributed in the development of workbook and handbook for NBEQF Level 4 in retail management for NCERT under MHRD. Ma'am is chairperson, Board of Studies in Banking and Finance, BOS members in Accountancy, special invitee BOS member Bank Business Management, and she is a co-opted BOS member in Commerce for SNDT University, Pune University, and Bharati Vidyapeeth University. Moving to her research journey, ma'am has presented and published various papers at national and international levels. Along with being PhD guide, ma'am is MPhil guide and also an external referee for assessment and viva work of doctoral thesis on by various universities. I'm sure you all must be mesmerized with the glory of this wonderful and brilliant lady. Through we are Though we all are sitting here at home, I would still request you all to clap your hands for our lady of the show, CMA Dr. Kinnari Thakkar. We are looking forward to hear from you, ma'am. Over to you, Kinnari, ma'am.
Thank you, madam. Thank you for this wonderful introduction. I'm excited now, very excited to take the session, and especially when we have this faculty development program with Mathushri Patel College. Madam Madhuri has always been instant respondent to all the interactions we had while collaborating, and finally our faculty development program was started last 2 days back. So today we are going to learn something which is actually to be applied in the entire journey of the research. So I thank college to be the part of this faculty there, to collaborate with the department and to be a part of this academic journey of research, and ensure that the participants will definitely have at least some kind of benefit at the end of the session. So now I begin formally with the introduction of the research methodology, which includes today's session: research design, sampling techniques, measurement, and scaling. Now, friends, one thing frankly and clearly I will tell, that today I will focus on the four related important aspects of research. However, research design and sampling techniques are more theoretical. Especially research design is more of a theoretical subject, where you are just that's it has no practical implication for a long period of journey. It is in the beginning, but your across the study period, focus and actual application will be of measurement and scale. So I will like you to understand, see, measurement and scale itself is a big 5-hour session. One measurement has to be a 5-hour FDP, 5 days FDP, and scaling also can be a 5-day FDP, full-fledged into detail if you want to understand. But for attending that high level of 5 days FDP, you should first know the basic fundamental of measurement and scaling. So I will try to ensure that in this 2 hours, measurement and scaling, which is the base of your entire research work, which you are planning to go ahead with, that at least should be clear to you. So when you are going for any interview, those who are doing MPhil, if they want to pursue PhD, and those who are doing PhD, if they are facing the Viva was, and if somebody asks them what is a parametric test, what is a non-parametric test, I have seen people are very confused. After doing PhD also, they are very confused about what parametric tests are. So this at least I will ensure that after the end of the session, you will not be confused at all about the types of tests, the types of scaling which we are using for applying for the various tests, and application I think will be the session which will be conducted tomorrow. So from tomorrow onwards, you will see the application of whatever base we are trying to understand today. So let us start with the first part, that is audible now. Madam has to, Rupesh, you have to just tell me whether I'm audible.
Yes, ma'am. You're audible.
Yes, because if there's something in
Yeah.
between, you let me know, because
Yeah,
sometimes,
ma'am.
you
Yeah,
know.
sure, sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah, ma'am.
Okay, so we'll start with the links between the basic elements of research. Now, when you talk about the first element of research is ontology. What is ontology? It is the study of what is there. First, whenever you start, decide upon your topic, you should know everything what is there, without which, out of the blue moon, you cannot come out with some kind of topic in your mind. So whatever is there existing, on the basis of that, ideas will come to your mind. Then you will have to, the next element will be epistemology, which means what and how can we know about it. Nowadays, what and how is very easy, because most of them have a common platform for gathering information and data, that is Google. Nowadays, even common platform for collecting data is Google Form. But I will surely tell you the advantages and disadvantages, and in what period and what study Google Form can be used, and Google Form data collection method should not be used. So another stage which we have is epistemology, wherein you know what and how we can know about the topic which we have decided. Then comes methodology. You have decided something we are going ahead with, but how can we go about acquiring that knowledge? So you have to prepare a plan. Now here comes our research design. So methodology, I'm going to expand in detail about research design, sampling, which kind of questions should be used, how a questionnaire can be, proper questionnaire should be drafted, the important points related to drafting of questionnaire. Then you have methods, which precise procedure to use. Lot of information is there, lot of data availability is there. Which data is used for you for your research work? How do you identify that? What is the criteria of identifying the information which is relevant to your research? That becomes very, the plethora of information and plethora of data collection which is done, everything cannot be useful, so you have to be focused. So then you decide a method, which precise procedure to use. Actually, this part of this will be again covered tomorrow, because when you are applying technique, the techniques will be applied on the basis of the data which you have collected and your objective. So that precise procedure part will be done today, part will be done in the next session. And which data can we collect? Now, which are the types of data? Everybody knows primary data and secondary data. whether to collect primary data, whether to collect secondary data. Again, a confusion. Almost everybody in Mumbai University will encourage you to collect primary data, as most of them, they say primary data is very it gives the good research work which you have done. That is completely wrong. Anywhere, if you are studying anything related to finance, it cannot be studied more on primary data. So most of the time when you are doing studies related to finance area, primary data will not have that weightage. All that has to be through secondary data, through annual reports, and through primary source of information. Primary source of information meaning you will gather information from identified CEOs or identified specialized expertise in that finance area. But you cannot have full primary data. In certain areas where you have marketing, you can have full primary data, because primary data gives authentic and first-hand information about implementation of any idea, any product, the marketing of any product related to the field of marketing and management. So there you can apply primary data, but here it is better in finance, accountancy generally. Secondary data also has equal importance. In fact, more relevant, secondary data can be considered as more relevant in finance kind of research which you are doing. Now we'll start with the first thing, research design. I think somebody has muted the mic. Rupesh, please check how.
Yes. Okay, ma'am.
Yeah.
You can continue, ma'am. Kinnari, ma'am.
Yeah, my internet. Yes, my internet is not connected. I can hear. You can hear me?
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah.
Yeah, my internet is getting disconnected. Okay. So we can start with research design. When we are discussing about research design, how do we what do we understand first about research design? Now, research design is a very, very clear concept. A research design answers questions of what, where, and how. Three questions mainly will be telling you what a research design is. One is, what will be the study about? What is the purpose of undertaking the study? What is the geographical area of the study? What type of data is required? What is the reference period? What will be the data collection techniques? What are the sources of research of data collection? Where can the sources of data be identified? What are the techniques that will be used to analyze the data? And finally, how will the report be drafted? Looking at the questions, I'm sure you all understood what is the meaning of research design. Just like an architect before construction of a building will plan the entire structure, in the same way a researcher before undertaking the work of research should plan the entire structure and answer these questions of what, where, and how, and that is the research design. Now 100% in the beginning, not necessary that your research design has to be perfect, because we are a social science. Social science never says that everything has to be perfect at the beginning. Like technology and science, generally they go for perfection. And perfection, why? Not because they are expert and good and we are all not like that, because we are related to human behavior. We have to understand, and there can be nothing called human behavior. Therefore, if you analyze and study research related to science, you will see there is all they will never go for that 95% kind of confidence limits. If you see in our research, we have 95% confidence. We also have 90, 91, but which is not accepted. So we don't generally don't teach that. We teach only 99% confidence level and 95% confidence level. Majority of the commerce related studies, social science related studies, humanities related studies are 95% confidence. Sometimes it is 99% confidence. But science and technology, they will not go for these kind of confidence limits. They have to have 100%. You cannot say that a building constructed is 99% perfect, because that 1% can create disaster. Wherein here it is not like that. We can say 99%. With 99% surety, we confirm a to and things which are based on the psychology of the human nature. So this is why it is important to distinguish between the methodology, the design, and the difference between the study which is to be undertaken when you are a social science researcher and when you are a science researcher. Now, when we talk about the 95 and 99%, and now when you read any research paper, you read it properly, that which percent confidence limits is applied by the researcher. So that should get in your mind while reading. Earlier you were just reading that something like 99 and 95% confidence limit is there, but now you should understand that why and which is the area where 100% psychological effect, 95% is chosen. But when marketing kind of thing, 99% is always better, because that gives you the idea of implementation or maybe acceptance of the hypothesis and rejection of the hypothesis. So this is a very important part when you are actually understanding the entire work, the journey of your research. So first starts with research design. Now research design again has 4 important parts. You can ask yourself whether you have understood research design. When you have understood research design, was, what, when, how, etc. questions. Information related to methods of selection, then data collection, analysis of data, and finally you are operationalizing it. So same we are converting into different parts. One, sampling design. Another is observational design, statistical design, and operational design. What is sampling design? The word itself says we are designing what kind of sampling technique has to be used, and if there is a strategy of observation as a method which is chosen, then whether to whom we should observe and how that entire study of observation has to be done. Then next will be, and under observational design, under what condition the observation is done. Then statistical design, how information and data gathered are to be analyzed. And operational design will tell you techniques. Now sometimes if you want to study something like in your canteen, you have seen from last 2-3 months that out of vada pav and samosa, what is more demanded by the students. So you set an hypothesis. Now, because on the basis of the trends which I have observed, these are the 2 options which we have given, and this is more demanded. So you can decide that the hypothesis is this is more demanding, product A is more demanding than product 2. So whether your hypothesis is confirming with whatever actual sale, that we have to identify. Now for that you will have to plan that this period you are identifying the number of students who have entered into the canteen, which category of students, age of the students, from their PG level or UG level, or you can have a detailed study of the entire choice of product A or product B. So you can have a plan your entire research in such a way by deciding the period, which period you will take to study the behavior. If you are doing observation can also see that you are listening to the interaction of the people who are sitting in the canteen. You are deciding the choice, whether the choice is their own or whether the choice is by the peer group. The friends are telling no, we'll have this. Sometimes the choice are different. So these all observations. Now this can be done only in a small group. Observational related studies many times can be not done, will not be possible in a huge large group of audience. It has to be done with a small group, closed group, and in that also you have to identify the specific areas. So any kind of study when you are doing, you have to observe the behavior, the the frequency of that particular statement which you want to confirm, and then you use different tools and make your conclusion. So design is in general planning your research. What is the purpose? It provides a comprehensive answers to the research questions, the control variables that may influence research outcome. Now what are the control variables? Now in my example I can say control variable is X wants something, but due to the Y's influence, X is ordering something else. So that's a control variable. In other words, suppose if there is an experiment which is done for deciding the effect of online technique on the improvement of research skill. Today's online sessions effect on the improvement of research skill. Now, if we want to do that, we'll set some parameters, but there will be some extraneous variable, which is called as additional, which influences the research outcome. What will be the additional variables? Suppose if I am choosing Mr. A and Mr. B from the participant. Mr. A has attended 5 such FDPs and Mr. B has attended only today's FDP. Now, if I am identifying whether A's and B's from A and from B, who is able to understand or maybe is more receptive about this FDP, I may get A. But why not? Because he's benefited from this. He's already had different FDPs and he has already had a lot of information. So that is an extraneous variable which may influence the outcome. So at the time of design, you have to identify the extraneous variable. When you are doing the design, you have to identify that this are the variables which will have indirect influence on the outcome, and we have to keep aside, or maybe we have to treat those variables so that the research outcome is a proper outcome. Now that how to treat is a statistical part. This design ensures adequate data collection to answer research questions completely, and a planned reason from observed facts and events to lead to the logically sound conclusion. Now what are the steps? Only self-explanatory, so I'll just run through the slide because focus I want on measurement and scale. Define the research problem. Design means you are doing everything right from end till writing report, everything you are planning. Again, not 100% true. It can be tentative planning. You are designing the research problem. You are selecting the sources, which source has to be collected, data. Select the measurement techniques. What is measurement? In the later part we are understanding. Sampling technique also we are understanding in the later part. Statistical tools to be applied. Tomorrow you will have Z test, F test, T test, which conditions we have to do, all that, median, mode, mean, etc. And decide the time frame. That's the most important thing, because once you start research and majority of the people they feel that 3 years long time, but you never know, 3 years are gone and you are stuck up with review of literature and you are not able to go ahead. So time frame you have to plan very clearly. What are the types of research design? Exploratory, descriptive, diagnostic, experimental, action, case study, survey, and survey design and survey of literature. Now we are not studying all. We are only studying exploratory, descriptive, diagnostic not related to our social science research, and experimental. We are studying these 3. Exploratory means you are actually exploring something new, coming out with some new information, coming out with something new concept, new idea. Descriptive means already that everything is existing, you are trying to describe in a new way an already existing event, describing it in a new different way. Experimental and hypothesis testing. Experimental and hypothesis testing here will be generally related to relationship. You know, you are casual kind of variables which are used. Causative. You are studying the cause and effect relationship by testing hypothesis. Now, essentials or contents of a good research design. It has to be clear. The objectives of the research has to be stated. Time period has to be stated. Sources, procedure, the universe of research design, which area, geographical limit you have to set, methods and techniques, which type of methods, techniques will be used, resources required, where financial resources, human resources, and other resources which are required to conduct the research. Now we will start with qualitative and quantitative research, which is a part of research design. Qualitative is exploring and understanding the meaning individuals or groups ascribe to a social or human problem. Data collected in participants settings, data analysis inductively building from particulars to general themes. So particular theme we select and to general we are moving across. And researchers make interpretation of the data. Now qualitative, quantitative, again we'll discuss more in the measurement and scale part. There you will understand better with the examples. Right now I'm only telling qualitative means where data, information, everything is gathered, which is not in the form of numbers. It is in the form of categories, answers, categories or variables, which are yes, no, agree, disagree to something. But quantitative, you are actually collecting it in the form of numerical data. So numerical data are analyzed using statistical tools and techniques. And sometimes you have to use both. Mixed method. Mixed method means you are using qualitative also and you are using quantitative also. So since I'm sharing the PPT later, these all things, we're not going much into detail. Exploratory design. As I told you, what is exploratory? You are trying to get something insight about a problem. A kind of new different insights about a problem, and that has to be done at a smaller level. That has to have a small sample size. So this point you have to remember. Even while doing your data, you're facing vivas, every time you should questions which are generally asked are which type of research design you have chosen, what are the different variables, what are the test parametric, non-parametric you have applied. So you should be able to answer. Exploratory when you are trying to bring about some insight, and generally exploratory has a small sample size. Again, sample size, we are deciding what a sample size is. Sample size and how to come out and how to decide your sample size in your research work. Now, exploratory also help in hypothesis formulation, and data collection is both from primary and secondary sources. Descriptive. Descriptive here is cross-sectional and longitudinal. Descriptive means you are getting an extensive picture of the phenomena, and it is obtained by using large sample. Now suppose we are now in the situation where the pandemic, because of that we are under lockdown and there's a disease which is spreading. So if you want to study people transmitted with COVID in a particular area, now in Mumbai and Dharavi is the most affected area and which can prove very dangerous if it is not controlled. So if you are wanting to do that kind of study, you will select that area, Dharavi area, as your population. When you are selecting that area as your population, what kind of study it is called? It is called as a cohort study, because the entire area is becoming your population. See, descriptive here means you are not coming out with something new. What you are deciding that whether the people are affected or not affected. These are only two things. You are just describing in a systematic, using systematic tools, whether the population is affected or not affected. Now, if you want to conduct this in 2 days to take proper decisions and quick action, can you within 2 days, find out the entire population whether it is affected or no? It's a huge population, so it is difficult, maybe difficult within 2 days or within a very short period of time to identify people transmitted with COVID, infected with COVID. So what you are doing, you are selecting that as a population. So that is called as a cohort. And in that, you are identifying some people, selecting samples. That kind of study is called as a cross-sectional descriptive study. means from that you are identifying how many samples, how many percentage of people in the population is affected. Now you decide your bar criteria, that if it is less than 10%, then what kind of strategy you are adopting. If it is less than 50%, what kind of strategy you should adopt. And if it is 90% from that population, the sample which you have identified, 90% are affected, then what kind of immediate actions has to be taken. So this kind of studies where you are identifying the uh, targeted population and amongst them the sample, that kind of studies will be a cross sectional descriptive study. Are you gaining any insight from them? Nothing. It's not an insight, it's an already existing situation which you are analyzing. So that is called as a cross sectional study. Longitudinal studies, it used panels for the same participants over a time period to assess the change in response and measure it. Now link it with the example. It uses panels of the same participants. Now same group, you are again treating them, those who are infected. By that you are treating them, you are keeping them in quarantine for 15 to 20 days, and then you are redoing the entire exercise again. Are you coming out with some insights? No, you have already existing methods of checking. You are applying that post treatment which you have given. So this kind longitudinal means long time period, long period. So after 20 days quarantining treatment, you are again assessing, and then you are checking now whether they are COVID affected or no. So that kind of study, again descriptive but longitudinal. So you can also have cohort studies. Cohort studies means you are identifying the entire population, entire Dharavi area you are checking. That is a cohort study. Part of that you are checking cross-sectional descriptive, and whoever is affected, treating post treatment you are checking them. That is a longitudinal studies. So you may be doing that in your research, but you may not be aware that this kind of study sometimes is called as, sometimes you are doing it, nomenclature may not be aware, sometimes nomenclature is known, but how and when these kind of strategies are to be applied, that is not known. So both has to be known when you are doing it and the name of what you are doing. Then we have causal design. Causal design is, they are relational. Causal means cause and effect relationship. Now after treatment, what is the effect of those population who was given proper medication, treatment and quarantine? So you are studying the cause and effect relationship, the effect of the treatment which is done. Then elaborate tools from statistics labor as design of experiments are employed such environment. So cause and effect, lot of things you have to understand. Generally it is identifying the effect of something when the treatment is given. The second part of our today's session is sampling techniques. Now here again an important part of identifying different kinds of samples. What is a sampling technique? A technique which is used for collecting samples. Why sample? You all know, doing the research on the entire population is time consuming, not very cost effective, and we don't have that much human resources also. Sometimes if it is a primary data to go and personally get information about the population, therefore to represent the population, a sample is selected and the entire study is done on that sample. Now, how do we decide whether that sample which is selected is representative? Therefore, we are applying techniques, various techniques of identifying samples from the population. A sample's characteristics first. What a sample should possess? It should be representative, it should be adequate, it should be independent and homogeneous. Homogeneous means population and sample both should have some kind of homogeneity. Otherwise, your entire research work will not have any serve any purpose. Sampling process. The comprises several stages: defining population, specifying a sample frame, specifying a sampling method, determining the sample size, implementing the plan, reviewing the sample process. We'll start directly with the types of sampling because process and everything is very theoretical, which I think you have already done in your research methodology subject somewhere during your teaching and learning process of PG level. What is a sampling? Again, this is a question which generally is very important when facing Viva or at the time of facing the not pre PhD interviews. Generally, when you are pre-PhD, you're going for a pre-PhD interview, technical questions related to research is asked. So this kind of question is the most important one. That is, which are the types of samples? Two types mainly broadly: probability sampling, non-probability sampling. Probability sampling means every unit in the population has a chance greater than 0 of being selected in the sample. Non-probability means where some elements of population have no chance of selecting. Random. Suppose you want to know something, you are just shouting from the window, hello, are you using Lifebuoy or you're using maybe some other soap? That's a sampling which you are randomly identifying just people walking around and asking questions. Like most of the reviews which are conducted of film reviews after the first show or maybe the second show, these are not a proper kind of sampling. It's just a non-probability convenience. You go catch hold of anyone and ask questions. That is a non-probability. So anytime when you are not selecting in a scientific manner, that is non-probability. But when you are selecting in a very scientific, systematic manner, that is called as a probability sampling, because every unit has a chance of being selected. Now, which are the types of probability sampling? Random, simple random, stratified random, systematic, and cluster or multi-stage sampling. Simple random sampling. Simple random sampling means total of like in our case of Dharavi, you have simple random you can go for a simple random sampling. How you can go for a simple random sampling? Entire population, from every house you select persons on a random basis, and you check their temperature and identify whether it is the person is COVID affected or not affected. So, but every person, entire house, every person has an equal chance of being selected. That is a simple random sampling. Systematic sampling, that's actually a formula kind of which is used. Systematic sampling means what? Suppose you select that in every house, if you have a person of age between 30 to 40. So in Dharavi, you go to every house and check whether there is a person of 30 to 40. So every person of that particular age, you are selecting 30 to 40 in that. That is a systematic sampling. Technically, systematic sampling, when you are doing by way of formula, is every kth item in the n population. Like if you are having 1,000 people, 1,000 population of the persons to whom you have to test. Out of that, if you want to identify 100, what you will do? 1,000 divided by 100. So you will get some number. So that number, out of that 10, suppose you're getting 10. So in that 10, you select one number out of 1 to 10. Suppose you select 7. Then you will select out of the 1,000 sample will be 7. Then you will have 17, 27, 37, 47. Again, systematic sampling has two different types of calculations which is to be done. So one type of calculation will be like this. You find out from the total population how much you want, how much is the sample which you want. So total population divided by sample, you will get some figure, and that kth figure which you have arrived, that becomes a sample which has to be considered for screening of temperature for identifying COVID infected or not affected. So that kind of sampling is called as a systematic sampling. Stratified random sampling, and then there is a cluster. We'll discuss this again more in detail. Non-probability, three types of sampling is non-probability: convenience sampling, quota sampling, and purposive sampling. Now, what do you mean by simple random sampling? A simple random sampling is a method of selecting n units from a population of size n such that every possible sample of size has an equal chance of being drawn. A simple random sample is free from sampling bias, and it is used for each stratas. In some case, if you have a geographically wide target population, then you distribute it in different zones, in different sectors, and each strata you may apply simple random sampling. It's a very scientific method of selection of samples. Stratified sampling. The population is first divided into two or more mutually exclusive segments based on some categories of variables of interest. Now, stratified word, strata word is a group. Now, suppose if you want to identify that everybody likes to wear wristwatch. If you want to identify how many people are fond of Rado in this brand of wristwatch, then which kind of population you will target? You all know what kind of to a particular income level, maybe say a person, those who are having 15 to 20 lakhs plus income. Below that, generally Rado being a big, at times it costs 1 lakh. So much of good Rado brands and all, they are costing 1 lakh for one wristwatch. So you have to target your target audience, and your population has to be divided into a particular strata. Same thing, you want to identify people who are buying cars and who are buying high model cars. So you divide them into group of those who are buying high model cars, but different companies, Hyundai brand or Maruti Suzuki, which brand. So you divide entire group into a strata, entire population into a strata, into a group, and then you conduct this kind of questions, put them questions to find out whether what kind of brands they are preferring. Systematic, as I said, that every nth element of list is drawn for inclusion in sample. Every nth element, your systematic calculation which I showed you, that's 1000 divided by 100, 10th. So from that you identify one number, say 7. So 7, 17, 27, 37, 47, like that. That means systematic. It is random, but still it is systematic. So that is also called as a systematic random sampling. And multi-stage. Government or any other big organization, widespread, if they want to conduct some kind of survey, then they will go for this multi-stage or cluster sampling. Geographically, they will divide that particular population into geographical area, and from each geographical area, sometimes they will district wise or maybe village wise, and from that random selection of population is done. So that is a multi-stage sampling. Then this is a non-probability, convenient and availability. Availability means whoever is available, you are doing that. Now you tell me, Google form which you all are circulating for taking information and survey about your research work, is it a systematic sampling? Is it a random sampling? Most of them, when we ask them, they will say random. For the term random is not actual random. It is not the, it's not holding the meaning of actual random. It also is a systematic sampling because we are selecting it in a scientific manner. But availability and convenient sampling is not a systematic sampling. Convenient and availability will be whoever comes across, you are asking them. It's like standing in the corner of a street and whoever passes through, you just ask them some gather some information from them. So that is a convenient sampling. Quota sampling, it is designed to overcome the most obvious flaw of availability sampling. Rather than taking just anyone, you set quotas to ensure that a sample you get represents certain characteristics in proportion to their prevalence in the population. And it is important to know something about the characteristics of the population ahead of time. Then purposives, for a specific purpose you are doing this, something, that's a purposive sampling. So it may not be for everyone. Now suppose if you want to know some favorite cuisine, one product has been launched by Pizza Hut, and you want to know some favorite item uh, of the customers who are visiting. So there's a one purpose, specific purpose. So you will ask all those who are visiting, customers who are visiting, you will ask them that out of these, this brand which this of pizza which we have launched, did you prefer that? Did you like that? So one specific purpose of identifying the or finding out the responses of the target audience. That's a purposive sampling. Again, it is not for all. It will be only for those who visit Pizza Hut. If you are not visiting and if they ask you, then you may not be able to answer. So a specific population and a specific purpose. So that kind of sampling. So therefore, this is not a systematic one. It is not selected on a scientific process, and therefore it is not called as a probability sampling. It is a part of non-probability sampling. A selection of an appropriate sampling method. How do we select? The select depends on your nature of the problem, the size of the universe, the availability of finance, and the availability of time. These are the four main factors on which the selection of problem depends. Now here comes the sample size. Now most of the sample size, everybody, when you ask them, they will say that 500. And I say that why 500? Yeah, sometimes a university is saying that minimum 500, etc. But that selection of a sample size is not scientific. You have to apply the sample size formula. The sample size formula, you Google it and you will get the sample size formula. Apply that, you will get some figure. Minimum that much, minimum you have to take. Over and above, you can take whatever you want, but that number should be the minimum sample which is which is calculated on the basis of the formula. And your answer also, when you are saying how many samples you have selected, 500, 1000, why these odd numbers, why this even this kind of round figures, not odd numbers, round figures. So let it be scientific. Take a formula, take your whatever your research problem is, and on the basis of that you not continuing, that's why I'm just going ahead. Yeah, now from this session your real application of research starts. Everybody has read about what is a standard error. Everybody knows that there's some kind of error which is there at the time of collection of data, and that kind of error is called as a standard error. You should know what is a standard error. A standard error is an error which is by default it is there when your samples are collected. So what is that by default, and how do you when is the time when you decide that now the sample error is less, so you can go ahead with the further research work? If the sample error is more, you have to reframe your sample size and collect more samples. So that you will come to know on the basis of the standard error formula. Very simple way I will tell you how to calculate the standard error formula. If we draw n samples from the same population and compute their means, then these means will not be the same, but all will differ with each other. The variation among these means is referred to as standard error of the mean. If the standard error is small, the sample is truly representative. With the help of diagram, I am telling you this. You have a population, say you have a population of 1000. You have a population of which you have decided as 1000. From that population, by using say any kind of random sampling technique, probability sampling technique, you are choosing sample A. Same technique you are using to choose sample B from the same population, and the same technique you to find out sample population. Now for this sample you are calculating the average. For sample A you are calculating mean A. For sample B you are calculating mean B, and for sample C you are calculating mean C. This is very simple. You have a population. From the same population you are removing 3 times different samples and you are calculating the average of that. Now the standard deviation of all these means which you have, mean A, mean B and mean C, the standard deviation of that is the standard error. Means if the standard deviation is less, lower, that means your sample is representative. If you have a very high standard deviation, that means your sample is not a representative sample. One should also try this before you randomly select a sample in your research work. That this kind of pilot study, by drawing samples from the same population different times, calculating the average of that and standard deviation of that. Now this all can be done statistically through SPSS, through even the Excel sheet, because Excel also has lot of good features and calculation formulas. So this if you do, and if your standard deviation is less, means your your sample is truly representative, which will give you right kind of conclusions. Now again, your important concepts for interviews and for Viva, pre-interview, pre-PhD and post-PhD both. Everybody knows that there are 2 types of data. One is quantitative and one is qualitative. Now, just a general information. Everybody knows that there is a meter, electricity meter, a gas meter, etc. What is meter? What does it do? What does the meter do? It will give you the measurement of the count of what an amount of electricity has been utilized, the electricity meter. So meter is measurement. So whenever you have something which can be measured, and it's a quantitative base, that is called as metric. So don't forget, due to confusion or due to maybe stress sometimes, that what is a parametric and non-parametric thing. Metric means meter, meter means quantity, you can measure. That means it is a quantitative method. And for quantitative and metric data, you can apply parametric test. Then what remains? Another is non-metric, which is qualitative. And for non-metric data, you can apply non-parametric test. So this is the broad understanding about types of data and types of test. Types of data you have 2. Don't tell now quantitative and qualitative. Forget that word. That is a word for the junior researchers. You should tell metric and non-metric. Somebody will tell me, am I audible? Because again my connection is showing disconnected.
Yes, ma'am. You're
Yes,
audible.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Audible? Okay. So now because again my connection is fluctuating. Okay, I'll start then. I'll continue. So now you forget the term quantitative, qualitative. You should only remember metric and non-metric. Metric means meter means quantity, quantitative. Non-metric means no meter, no measurable. That means qualitative. And for metric, parametric test is applied. For non-metric, non-parametric test is applied. Now, parametric tests are of which types? This is all the measurement which we have started. Parametric tests are of 2 types, discrete and continuous. Discrete means it results in counting number of books, number of students. That results in counting, but it is measurable. You can measure, you can count. A continuous means it is a result of measurement, result of measuring. Distance, can you count the distance? You can measure the distance, but there is a numeric figure which you are getting. Same thing for discrete, there is a numeric figure which you are getting. You can have number of books 10, number of students 100, but there is a numeric figure which you are arriving at. Same for continuous uh, type of data. These are all data, discrete data series, continuous data series. So continuous, again, you can have measuring distance travel. You can have distance travel 10.5 kilometers. So 10.5, 0.5 will not apply when it is discrete. 0.5 in point it comes means it is a continuous. Continuity is maintained. Here you have a break 1 to 10, 11 to 5, 11 to 20, etc. You cannot have 10.1, 10.2, 10.3, etc. 1.1, 1.2. It has to be a full figure. Then distance traveled or blood pressure. You are measuring the blood pressure, you are measuring the temperature, etc. That is a continuous. Then we move on to qualitative. Qualitative is non-metric, and for that non-parametric tests are applied. What are non-parametric tests? It is dichotomic, polynomic. Dichotomic means those questions which can be answered in only two options. Now, normally it was when we used to ask a questionnaire, you used to ask, or when you were filling up a form of any kind of admissions, you had gender, male, female. Nowadays, of course, third option is added, but assuming that we are in that old thing. So you have two options, either this or this, yes or no. Suppose if I ask you, do you have car? You cannot say I have a wheel or I have a steering and etc. You know, you have a car or you don't have. You either yes or no. It has to be only two answers which can be. So such kind of data where two answers can be asked is dichotomic kind of data. And when you have more than one, more than two options possible, more than two answers, that is what is your education. So we can write number of options, 10th, 12th, then graduate, postgraduate, doctorate, postdoc, etc. So you may have more than two options. Religion, you may have Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, and etc. etc. different. So whenever there is more than two options possible, that is called as a polynomic qualitative data. And when you have two options, dichotomic qualitative data. And for all qualitative data, non-parametric test can be applied. Parametric test, parametric means the tests which are applicable on numbers, that cannot be applied. Now one more point again, when you are analyzing these data, this dichotomic and polynomic is converted into numbers, but that number has no value. Like suppose if you remember that Sachin Tendulkar, whenever he played, his t-shirt had 10 number. So what was that 10? That 10 does not mean that he is the 10th best player of the team. That was his identification number. Like roll numbers, roll number you have 1, 2. 1 does not mean that the best student, last 100 roll number means the 100 best student. It's just an identification. So when we analyze the data, you give them the dichotomic and the polynomic identification number 1, 2. If they say, do you have car? Yes, you can write 1. If they have no, then you can write it 2, so that you convert them into the language which the computer understands, which the Excel program understands. So that may not have any analytical purpose. So all qualitative data will be converted into a numeric understandable language of the computer for the purpose of analysis, but that numeric value which is assigned may not have any significant purpose or any significant value on the basis of which any conclusion or judgment can be made. Then a level of measurements. Which are the level of measurements? The level of measurement refers to the relationship among the values that are assigned to the attributes, feelings, or opinion for a variable. Now, this blah blah theory I generally don't explain, just write it in the PowerPoint slide, and I will explain you with the examples. There are 4 levels of measurement: nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. Nominal and ordinal are for qualitative. You can also remember NO, nominal N and ordinal O. So no. So where you don't have numeric, it is no. Non-numeric, which is non-metric. And non-metric information, how do you collect non-metric information? You don't collect it in the form of number. You collect it in the form of categories or attributes displayed from that particular set of data. Categories also, that is why it is called as a categorical measurement. What is nominal? Nominal has again dichotomic, and ordinal is a type of rank which can be assigned. As I told you that you can answer sometimes in 2 different options, yes or no, and other things you can answer in various more than 5 options. So here nominal will have dichotomic type of variables or questions which can be posed. Again, there are 2 different types of dichotomic variables. One is true dichotomic and one is artificial dichotomic. Now, what is true dichotomic? True dichotomy means it is in the real true sense, it is real. Now, if you ask dead or alive, either the person is dead or the person is alive. So that will be a true dichotomic. Then what is artificial? Artificial dichotomic means pass and fail. Now, why it is artificial? Because you have set one criteria that if it is less than 40%, then it will be treated as fail. If it is more than 40%, it is treated as pass. In certain cases, less than 50% fail, more than 50% pass. So that is a criteria which is decided by the person, by the evaluator. But true is not decided by the evaluator. It is like dead or alive. It's a generally acceptable criteria. So that is why it is called as true dichotomic. But somewhere which we have kept a bar, we have kept a limit or set a criteria. These kind of variables, these kind of data collected will be an artificial dichotomic data, which will come under categorical. Now, dead or alive, can we give number to them? Dead and alive, 1, 2, we cannot measure. Can we measure that? No. Pass and fail, we cannot measure. We can measure the number of students passed and failed, but that student pass and fail, we cannot have measurement. So that's a category. Dead is a category, alive is a category. Do you have car? Yes, car, that fail. So these answers where numeric cannot be applied is called as a categorical collection of data. Then ordinal. Ordinal means you are ranking. Ranking is how many, or you can also have the numbers, number of cars sold. So you can have number of cars of this brand, that brand, etc., sold by a dealer. Then number of patients. That is an again ordinal kind of data. So these 4 basically, nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio, are basically the different types of data which are collected. And in the questionnaire, you have to have all the different types of data which are collected. Then we have nominal scale. Nominal scale, meaning of that, as I already explained it to you, I'll just read through this nominal scale. It measures the presence or absence of a characteristic. Either it is there or it is not there. Numbers are assigned for identification. Number 1, roll number 1 is just an identification. Your Aadhaar card, it's an identification. Number alphabets do not justify the order. So roll number 1 is best, no. Roll number 100 is 100th best, no. It does not justify the order. Numbers are only labels. No arithmetic or logic operations can be performed on nominal data. Which are the types of nominal data in addition to the yes no kind of thing? You may have nominal scale as an employee status, industry, different types, the subject specialization. You cannot define that or justify that in a numeric variable, numeric number. Ordinal is rank. Order, ordinal means, you remember order like it's a rank. This does not mean that first rank is twice as good as second. Categorical variables that assess performance are ordinal variables. Now, how you are doing that? You will write good, average, poor, agree, etc. Now, how we choose, why we should choose, and when we should choose good, average, poor, when we should choose agree, disagree, strongly agree, that also we are going to discuss after this measurement points. You can understand the good performer has done better than average and poor, but how much better cannot be calculated. So when you say that this person is a gold medalist, this person is a silver medalist and a bronze medalist, that means everybody will know that gold medalist means best performer, second best is silver, and third best is bronze. But how much best? That will be difficult sometimes, not sometimes, that will be difficult to calculate, and therefore you are just ranking. You are not giving numerical values or assigning numerical values to that performance. Attitudes like strongly agree, disagree, etc. are also ordinal variable. Again, quantitative metric which is a interval and ratio. There we had nominal, ordinal. Here we have interval and ratio. What is interval? Something which can be rated on scale, and ratios which can be measured. Almost that quantitative data which we have done. Interval is measured along a scale where each position is equidistant from one other. The examples are weight, age, number of employees, number of family members, family income, etc. Now we will start with the important part again, which is scale. Everybody has done some kind of reading and collected information, and on Google Forms sometimes, and have asked questions whether you like, dislike, agree, etc. Now here we are going to understand about what is a scale. A scale means it is a method of ascribing quantitative value to qualitative data. So the data is qualitative, but you are giving them a quantitative value to make it amenable to statistical analysis. A numerical value is assigned to each potential choice, and a mean figure for all the responses is computed at the end of the evaluation or survey. The most effective Likert scales generally consist of 5 to 7 balanced responses that people can choose from, often with a neutral midpoint. So now whenever any Likert scales questionnaires you are developing, this you have to keep in mind, whether you have to go for 5 scale Likert ratings or you should go for 7 scale ratings, and when you should go for 5 scales and when you should go for 7 scale. Now sometimes you ask that you are comparing two different products. Now suppose if you are comparing two different products, you should specify the products. The most important point which you have to understand here is specify. Now if you ask how do you like Mumbai city compared to other cities, how will a person answer? I will compare Mumbai with Delhi. You will compare Mumbai with Bangalore. The another person will compare Mumbai with Kolkata. So how do you the person respondent know that you want to compare Mumbai with which city? So you have to be very specific when you are asking how do you find Mumbai city with Delhi? How do you find X with Y? Same way, whenever your questions are asked, you have to be very specific, and then you have to give the options. Your example products delivered by Amazon in comparison to Flipkart. You are comparing two companies' performance. Worse, much worse, somewhat worse, about the same, somewhat better, and much better. Now, much, somewhat, etc. also I will tell you how and when we should write that. First, you understand all the different type of examples which we can quote, and then we will go with this much, somewhat, about meaning. If you want to rate the lectures delivered by commerce faculty in the terms of knowledge and content delivery, you may have this kind of five Likert point Likert scale. It is poor, fair, good, very good, and excellent. So on the basis of this different categories, we can rate the lectures which are delivered. Suppose if you want to rate the overall impression of this session, you can have, I didn't get what I wanted, got a little of what I wanted, somewhat I got what I wanted, got a lot of what I wanted, and got everything. Now, how do I perceive that got a little for you? What is got a little for you? So a researcher has to set the percentage of what do you mean by got a little? What do you mean by somewhat? What do you mean by got a lot? And everything. What everything is very clear. So for didn't get anything and everything are two extremes. So in these two extreme, the respondent may not be confused. The respondent will reply immediately if there are two extreme answers. But how do a respondent understand that according to me somewhat is what? Respondent X may feel 2% if I have understood, that means I got a little. But respondent 10% is got a little. So how do a respondent understand? For that also your questionnaire has to be framed and has to be explained to the respondents that this is what the purpose of the analysis is. Now sometimes there are questions which are opposition. Then in that case how your rating has to be done. If you want to express your views with regards to promoting students without examination during COVID-19. Now this is what is the the guidelines of the university and UGC, that you are going to promote students without examination. Now in such kind of uh, answer which you want from the respondents, your first option, if it is strongly oppose, that should be your scale, first scale, strongly oppose, somewhat oppose, second scale. You cannot say strongly favor because it's a negative kind of answer which you are expecting, negative information kind of thing. So there your negative should form the first scale, first rating. So every time when you have a positive, here you have a positive kind of information and negative kind of information. Both times you have to ensure that your rating progresses in what way, from negative to positive. So here we have written Likert scale. For 1 we have written negative, it goes to the positive as strongly favor. Now sometimes whether 1 has to be taken as strongly favor, 5 has to be taken as strongly favor, that also again has a lot of confusion when you have to take what. That purely depends on your perception, your requirement, and your research which you are undertaking. So I will suggest at the end, that how to decide a Likert scale, that also we will have to understand, that how do we decide that this Likert scale has to be used for this particular study. Suppose if you are visiting to bank and if you want to know about how many times, how your frequent, what is the frequency, see, rate your frequency of visit to a bank. Now here when you are rating your frequency, never and every time is again too extreme. Never is 0%, every time is 100%. So that's a too extreme. So that will not be a confusion. Now if you say rarely, for me rarely is 1 or 2 times. For you rarely will be 3 or 4 times out of 100 visits, and for somebody else rarely will be 5 to 6 times because the person is doing 300 visits in bank. So how do we know what rarely is understood by the respondents? So here you have to specify. Rarely means less than 10% of the chances when I could have. So less than 10% of the times. Then occasionally means I have to specify it. I could have visited, but less than 30% of times I am visiting it. So I visit the bank occasionally. Sometimes that means more than about 50% of the chances when I could have visited, I visited bank. Frequently is more than 70% of the chances. Usually 90%, and every time is 100%. So you can have a 5-point Likert scale also, combine rarely, occasion, and frequently, usually. And you can have some maybe frequently, usually is combination as 80% of the chances. So it depends on you whether you want 7-point Likert scale, 5-point Likert scale, but you have to be specific like this, that for you, a researcher perceives rarely as 10 to communicate that rarely to the respondent. So you can specify into bracket less than this person, less than this person, occasionally means less than this person. You can, or suppose if it is a closed group survey or a sample, then also it can be communicated very easily. Now again here, every time writing and ticking for gathering responses is not always advisable. So it also depends on in what mood the respondents are responding to your questionnaire. So sometimes what you should do is you should try to incorporate emojis in your questionnaire. Which kind of questionnaire? A sincere, serious study also can have emojis if it is related to a different, maybe if you are doing something from gathering data from small children, then they may not be interested in answering agree, disagree, strongly agree. So you can show them emojis and you can take information from them. Now here again, in level of agreement, you can have this 7-point Likert scales level of agreement, starts from strongly disagree to strongly agree. Again, same point I will tell you, strongly disagree and strongly agree will not have any kind of problem because it is an extreme. But what according to you is disagree? 10%, 20, 30%, 50%, 70%, 90%. You have to specify that, and generally this is the criteria on the basis of which rating has to be done. If you have level of satisfaction 7-point Likert scale, then you can have this 7 points: completely dissatisfied, mostly dissatisfied, somewhat neutral, neither satisfied nor dissatisfied, somewhat satisfied, mostly satisfied, and completely satisfied. So these kind of Likert scale you can have for your level of satisfaction. Again, your questions can be, if you want to say I feel sad, how often? Most of the time, sometimes, rarely, almost never. I feel agitated. You can also, have these kind of ratings, these kind of scales for answering or collecting answers from the respondents. From the children, or maybe you are taking information outside a restaurant, or you are taking information outside a movie theater. After seeing a movie or before seeing a movie, who is interested in answering your questions which are in the form of writing or ticking marks sometimes? So you can show them, how did you find this? Very poor, poor, average. So they, and maybe with the emojis expressions, they can understand that what kind of rating what kind of ratings are assigned to that specific questions of yours. So like this, you can have a questionnaire, you can just show them and collect data. Only thing is that the questionnaire has to be balanced out. You cannot have all the time only emojis, or maybe you cannot have all the time only tick questions or yes, no. Especially when it comes to writing information, even 2 lines becomes a pain for the respondent, unless it is a respondents which is a closed group survey where everybody's responses are taken for actually implementing a particular idea. Only in that case you can avoid giving all these kind of emojis and detailed writing, but otherwise you have to use this for gathering information. You can also use this, and below that you can show what this means. You can show the 0 means I am so lost, your understanding me. So you can also rate the session on the basis of these emojis. I don't really get it. What is happening? I've just started getting something. I've got it. And yes, now I am also, as the with the concept clarity, I can also teach this random sampling or measurement, ordinal, nominal. At least I'm sure that I can teach parametric and non-parametric meaning to anyone. So any of these you can also apply for your kind or your understanding towards any of the sessions. And lastly, I will tell you before we discuss something about from where you have to get Likert scale, and you are not advised to prepare your own Likert scale because it is not acceptable for a pure research. I will tell you this, you can just go through that. There are certain books, there are certain studies where the entire Likert, and there are documents and papers which are published and which they have validated the Likert scale. So whenever you are using this, don't use the Likert scale of your choice. Use the one which is validated, use the one which is accepted, and only then the outcome which you are trying to generate, the conclusion of your research, will have a real purpose. So these are the Likert scales which are the published one, which I have shown you on the screen right now. That level of acceptability, if you are asking for a 7-point Likert scale, then you can have totally unacceptable, unacceptable, slightly unacceptable, neutral, slightly acceptable, acceptable, and perfectly. Now this is not with something I or you have created. This is an authenticated, published responses, and you should always go for an authenticated, published Likert scale on the basis of the acceptability of that, and then you should choose that. So when you are framing a questionnaire, you identify whether these questionnaires which you are framing are having the scale which you are giving are the published and acceptable scale. Now if you see effect of X in the second layer, the middle row, second last, effect on X, you can have these: no effect, minor, neutral, moderate, and major. So when you say this, these are the authentic points which are published in different journals, which scientifically accepts the different responses of Likert scale. So this is the last information which I was planning, which I intended to give about scale and measurement. Now actual scale and measurement calculation when you are doing, that has to be in the analytical part, which I am not taking. I think that you will have tomorrow. So now it is open for questions.
Thank you, ma'am, for very
Continue with
informative
research.
session.
Thank you.
Participants, you can ask your question. Kindly unmute yourself and ask question one by one.
Ma'am, thank you for your presentation. I would like to know, like, when we are using our Likert scale, like 1 to 5, what to do with the neutral part of it? Like, we leave it like that, or do we have something else, or can we use only 4?
No, ma'am, you don't, that's what I'm telling. Don't use something which you want to. Use something which is official, authentic, and published. So if you are using neutral, that means you decide your criteria. What do you mean when you are choosing neutral? What do you understand by neutral? So you
Because like
decide
some of
your
them might,
criteria, discuss it with.
like some of them might just only tick neutral, so I may not get the results.
But then if many of them are there like this, then you will have to ensure that you're collecting data in what manner that information has been collected, that we have to see. If many of them are like that, then I think you should recollect the data, because that will not serve the purpose. What is the purpose of if it's opinion which is not from the point of view of analysis, then I think that will not have any effect. So
Thank you,
I
ma'am.
think you
Thank
should redo that.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes.
Good evening, ma'am.
Yes.
First, I would like to thanks to you for a very informative information, and thanks to the organizer as well for organizing this for us.
Thank you. Yes, madam.
I have two doubts.
Yes, ma'am.
First is what is the validity and reliability of data? What we include in that?
Validity and reliability of data is first you are ensuring whether whatever data you have and whatever from that you have, sample size which you have decided, whether that is a normally, kind of distributed kind of data. Now that is done through Cronbach alpha. Now I think that validity and reliability will be tomorrow's session, madam. That Cronbach alpha is to be calculated to identify whether your data is worth proceeding or whether you need to redo collection of all the data.
Okay,
So
means
that is a statistical check. Yeah.
Okay, okay. And another question is, what is the difference between sampling frame and sampling method? While writing in research methodology, what exactly to be written in that?
Method means, ma'am, which method you are using, non-probability, probability, etc. That's a sampling
Okay.
method. That's a technique.
And
And
what is
frame
sampling
means
frame?
you are deciding everything about sampling. You are deciding the method, you are deciding number of samples which you are using, you are deciding the area from which your, your sample will be collected. The entire part of your, the sampling portion which you are going to do. That is a sampling frame. You are identifying the framework within which the entire sampling thing will be undertaken. So methodology is one part of the sampling, entire process of that sampling which you have decided.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. But the last one is that you showed that last slide of the Likert scale.
Yes. Yes.
The response answer. So can you share that at the PPT? If you can share the PPT, that is well. If you can share
Yes,
that last slide where it is published, means we are not
ma'am,
able
I
to
will
see it.
also. Yeah, ma'am, because that is a big thing. No, I will show it to you. You can write from here also. I will show that the website is there. On that website,
Where it is published, how we can come to that they are.
ma'am, on Google you will get everything. If you type Google research papers for authentic Likert type scale publication, everything
Okay.
on site you can get authentic
Okay,
Likert site publication. So you have lot many research papers, ma'am, and it's all official research papers. Some are paid and some are unpaid. So you can opt for any of that.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, next question, please.
Oh.
Hello.
Yes,
madam.
yes, Manisha, please tell.
Hello, good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, madam.
First, before I ask the question, ma'am, Kinnari ma'am, let me tell
Yes.
you, your session was absolutely lucid, and in such a simplified way, you have explained us the sampling techniques.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you for that. I just wanted to ask you that you have taught us two type of sampling methods, the probable and the non-probable. Where it is in non-probable, it is convenient or quota sampling. Suppose if
Yes,
we
ma'am.
take this convenient kind of sampling, is it in any way less of relevance or less of weightage than probable?
Definitely, madam, it will be less because it depends on which kind of research. Now, if you are doing it for a PhD, ma'am, systematic sampling is always advisable. That's what I was going to say. That in the midst, I mentioned that Google form, which I am telling you. We will understand whether that kind of technique is generally acceptable. Sampling collection is acceptable or not. See, it is like Google form. When you are circulating, it is as good as your convenience. It is not something which you have random, and every from the population, every item has the equal chance of selection. So the results which is generated by this may not be a representative or may not apply to the general population. Generally, when we are doing a research, we should do in such a way that your population results should be applicable to the sample, your sample results should be applicable to the population research. So when that is not happening, that means their collection of data, choice of sampling technique somewhere is erroneous. So we have to
Thank
be
you, ma'am.
careful when you are doing it. It has to be some systematic or a simple random sampling.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. I have not seen the chats. I will check.
Any other questions?
Now tomorrow's session, when they will when madam will ask you parametric, non-parametric, everybody should answer that. When you just
Yes.
remember meter, and automatically you will get answers of everything. Measurable, non-measurable, everything. Because from there you will learn all these calculations of measurement, scale, what is nominal, I can tell you, but how that nominal is done on Excel sheet, that is not our today's topic, no? So that the statistician person will tell you. Anybody has any questions?
Yes, Manisha, please loud speak. Manisha, loud. Be a little bit loud if you're talking. Any participants? Have you any questions? I think, ma'am, it's
No problem, ma'am. They can
Mm.
also post it later on. Most of them have my numbers. Most of them, they keep on sending me messages and everything.
Okay, okay, ma'am. No problem. So thank you very much, ma'am, for your wonderful session. I got
Thank you.
very things in that. Actually, I'm going in the process of the research. So it is very informative and helpful to me. Thank you.
Thank you,
Someone
madam.
is talking, ma'am. Some Kavita Geeta is asking the question.
Yeah. They can ask, ma'am, if they are not able to, connect with their mic, they can ask me even on the chat box.
Yeah, you can type in the chat box too.
Yeah, because you can type in the chat box, madam, because if I am not able to connect with you. It is the same 5-point Likert scale. Likert is a person who has developed this scale. So we call it as a Likert scale.
Ma'am, there is always one confusion with the convenient sample and purposive sample, ma'am. Like with some more examples, maybe you can explain to us.
Purpose, yes. See, purpose means a specific purpose you have planned. As I told you that suppose you want to know that a brand of pizza is liked by person or no, that's only one purpose. Only one purpose. Okay. So whoever is
Okay.
visiting your uh, pizza outlet, Pizza Hut outlet, you can ask questions only to them. You cannot ask. Generally, you will not feel like asking randomly anybody walking on the road. Convenience is you can answer anybody randomly, anybody walking on the road also. So convenience is a broad audience. Purposive will be narrowing down your audience. You can also ask anybody randomly in the road in case of purposive, but you should be sure that at least they have come or they have visited the Pizza Hut outlet. Only then they will be able to answer. So first you should know that they have visited, then they be a part of your sample. Otherwise they cannot be a part of your sample. So that's a specific purpose. If you want to know choice of your brand, if you want to know choice of some specific, like in a mall, if they want to know that one specific brand is favored more or less, or how much it is favored, if that kind of questions. So all those who are visiting the mall, that becomes your population, and in between those who are visiting different outlets, that can be those who are going to that X brand outlet, can be your sample. So population can be all those who are visiting your mall. But anybody walking on the road, you are asking them, then you are taking a chance just for your convenience, or maybe you're taking a chance whether they may have visited mall, they may have not visited mall. So you are not very specific to your work. Purposive means you have a specific framed sample and population.
Like now, if
Within
I
that
want to
sample,
ask a COVID patient, means it should be a COVID patient like who has suffered with this condition and not others. Like he should have experienced it. Like that will become purposive
yeah,
sample.
that is a purposive. If you ask general, that will be a convenience. If you ask everyone who is related to that, if you want to
Okay.
specifically ask the psychological problems of a person who is suffering from COVID, so that's a purpose, that your purpose is to find the psychological mindset, or the behavior, psychological behavior of the persons affected by COVID. Then you should not go for, then you cannot apply convenience sampling. If you are applying convenience sampling, means your method of sampling is a wrong method, it's not a representative method. Then you have to only go for those who are infected, and these are out of 100 infected, you may not be interested in asking all. So you may have, again you may select that 35 to 40 ka age psychology I want to study, so that becomes your sample. So your purpose and your purposive target audience, target population and target sample, that is very clearly identifiable. Generally for purposive, you are easily able to identify your population and sample. But for convenience, you are not able to identify the population and sample. Any convenience sampling which you are choosing, your population and sample both cannot be identified. It is just whoever comes across, you ask them. The main difference is this: in purpose, you are identifying clearly your population and sample.
Thank you, ma'am. It's clear now.
Yes, yes, thank
you. Someone had asked biometric analysis. Please explain biometric analysis.
In where in the chat box it is asked?
Yes, chat box. In chat box it is.
Well, biometric analysis, frankly, up till now we have not applied it in social sciences. All these, especially related to commerce, these kind of analysis has not been applied. And so many other queries are also there. Can you, ma'am, read some queries if you have? Because my net connection is fluctuating.
Yes, ma'am, I'm ready. The question is from Anita Pandey. If I take Google Form to collect data personal rather than distribute, is it okay?
1 minute. Yes, ma'am.
The question is, if I collect Google Form to collect the data personal rather than distribute.
Google Form is okay, madam, but you have to identify and you have to do it as per the. It is not coming as a simple random sampling. Again, Google Form always will be a convenient one. You know the person and therefore you are going to the person.
Yes.
Or through you are going to some. Actually, for research, when you are going for a random sampling, random means it is completely free of bias. Google Form becomes at least somewhat through somebody you are taking some kind of bias.
Hello.
Google Form.
Hello.
Some kind of bias element. Yes, madam.
Hello.
Hello, madam. Yes.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes, madam.
Are you able to hear me, ma'am?
I can.
Ma'am, actually, I'm asking.
Have put their mics on. That's why.
Ma'am, actually, I want to ask that in the simple random sampling, I take Google Form along with me to store the data. it is easy for
Okay.
me to store all the data in the Google form where I can export it in Excel very nicely. So
Correct,
will it be
correct.
fine? So that I
How
can
you
show
are
it. Yes,
that
ma'am.
is fine, ma'am, for your exporting and collecting data, everything that is fine. But what is your sample and what is your population?
So,
If that
ma'am,
is clearly
the
identified,
sampling method, I have used the traditional one, that is simple sampling. But rather than physically distributing the questionnaire, I have taken a Google form and I asked the question personally.
that is okay, ma'am. When your sampling strategy is defined clearly and unbiased, then through
Mm.
which mode, like questionnaire also. See, we are going and taking 10
Only
in a
the questionnaire mode, instead of going for the
basically your
physical, I took uh,
technologically. You are
Google
doing it in
form.
a technologically convenient way. Then it is fine. Only thing
So,
is your identification should be unbiased.
so I can write in my sample description that this is what I have done. Will it be justifiable?
You can write to, ma'am, because if it is unbiased and if it is systematic, how you are collecting through laptop or through adding nowadays whoever is collecting samples, see, they don't carry a
Because
notebook of
because
paper.
its
They
Google
carry
form
a
is
direct
very
document.
easy. I just open a form, I
Yes,
ask the person, I just tick the respond, and the work is done rather than
yes,
carrying
of
those
course.
physical forms.
Yes. The recording style is different, but your collection style,
But
the type
that
of
is the
data
old
which you have
traditional
collected, method. So
the
this is a
sample
best thing.
method.
Very simple.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Only
Yes,
this I
this is
want to
allowed.
confirm it.
This is allowed. Yes,
Yeah.
definitely allowed,
Thank you
ma'am.
so much.
Thank you, madam. All the best.
Yeah.
Hello,
Yes, madam. Any other question? Yes, madam.
ma'am. The one participant who asked you just now a question, she referred to
Mhm.
something as traditional sampling method.
Yes.
Ma'am, can you please
Yes.
explain what is that?
Traditional means just now which we understood, no, madam? Simple random sampling, this strata. See, your stratified sampling, which we have understood. Systematic sampling. Now, systematic
Okay.
sampling means what we had out of 1,000 total population in Dharavi. 100 we want to identify. So 1,000 by 100 we did 10th. In that 10 we identified one number as any random number as say 7. And from 7th, every 10th unit we will select 7, then 10th after 7 is 17th, 10th after that is 27th. So now you know that 7 is Mr. X, 17th is Mr. Y, 27 is Mr.
Okay.
Z. So you know that. So now what you do, you take an electronic device and go to 7, Mr. X, and ask him to fill the information. Go to 17th, Mr. Y, ask him to information. So instead of taking it in a traditional way, writing, giving a paper, pen, etc., asking them to take, you are electronically going using the electronic device and collecting information. But the sample is how the sample is created. The sample is collected through the traditional method. Traditional means the unbiased method, the one which we already have.
Okay. Okay, ma'am.
Same thing is
Thank you,
stratified.
ma'am.
Stratified means you select groups, stratas. Stratas is
Yeah.
your population. From that, randomly you select sample, any random method, and you give them an electronic device and tell them to take, touch, whatever, and collect data, which is exported in the Excel sheet. By way of Google form, you do that, which is exported in the Excel sheet, and your entire process of analysis becomes very quick and fast. That is what she asked me. That method was traditional, but recording was this
Okay.
through
Yeah.
electronic device.
Yes, ma'am. Understood. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, madam. I think that
Hello.
biometric thing also I had somebody has asked, which I said that it is generally not related to the analysis which is in our commerce or social science. Now, for biometric, I can give you an example that there are in the recent times, there are in the last 1 month, 2 months, there are so many people who have been home quarantined. Those who are coming from outside India, they have been checked, their temperature screening has been done, and some of Now, how do we know that whether they are really keeping themselves home quarantined? So, some kind of device or instrument is kept as a surveillance for them. And then you record whether they are home quarantined or no. But generally, we are not using it as of now for any of our social science kind of thing, research, any of these kind of techniques, biometric statistical techniques. So it is a kind of, now people are keeping this what we call that surveillance of those who are moving on the terrace through different cameras. So all that kind of all that kind of keeping track of quarantined people or stay at home, these kind of information will be a kind of a type of biometric analysis or checking kind of tool. But as of now, it has not been for commerce and social science. Other question?
Yes, Dr. Parikh is going to speak something. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I just want to congratulate Dr. Kinnari. Very nice lecture, madam.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, madam. Hope everybody
Very
has
nice,
understood
very clear,
something
and
related to.
very. Hello.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Yes,
Oh,
ma'am,
it's
you're
my
audible.
pleasure.
Yes,
Audible
madam.
now?
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Yes, madam. Yes, madam.
yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
It's very clear it was, and very nice examples. Very close to the, the day-to-day routine life. The examples you have put it up. It was very lucid.
Thank you, ma'am. It means a lot from you if I get these kind words. It really motivates me to do further.
Yes, it's going on very well, Dr. Madhuri. There is a hearty congratulations to you.
Yes, madam. Good.
Thanks a
Seriously,
lot,
Madhuri
ma'am.
madam is taking a lot of
Yeah,
efforts.
yeah.
Yeah, there is a question
Thanks a lot,
of
ma'am.
Yeah,
Anand
so see you
Deshpande.
tomorrow now.
Whether we can use snowball sampling. Madam, there is a question. Can we use snowball sampling in PhD thesis? Well, madam, I already told that comes under the non-probability type. Again, snowball sampling is something where you are not giving equal opportunity for every population unit. So, majority of the time, avoid it for your PhD thesis. Do always a systematic and scientific sampling technique. That was for Mr. Anand Deshpande.
Yes. There is one important announcement regarding tomorrow's session. Tomorrow's session is on 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. So
Yeah, Dr.
kindly
Swati.
note, and yeah, it is in morning,
Yeah.
10 to 12.
Yeah. Okay.
Madam is
Yeah,
in the
please
morning.
note all the participants. We will remind you in WhatsApp group too, but keep in mind. Thank you.
So I can end the meeting, ma'am, now.
Yes, I think it's
I will wait. I have no problem, ma'am. You can tell me whenever you want.
yes,
I
ma'am.
will
We can close now.
Okay.
Rana, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I'm here.
Yeah, please. Over to you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So that was such an enriched knowledge passed on to all of us by CMA Dr. Kinnari Thakkar. On behalf of all the participants and Marketry KM Patel Senior College of Commerce and Science, I convey our heartfelt thanks to ma'am for clarifying on core concepts of research. I'm very much sure all the participants have got cleared their queries as the explanation provided by ma'am was specific, suffice and lucid too. I also thank college management, Sri Dunduli Mitra Mandal, our vice principal ma'am, Mrs. Madhuri Nandanwar, an entire research committee for organizing such a fruitful FDP online even in these difficult times of pandemic. So all dear participants, we all must have heard that a well-known quote that a drop becomes an ocean. So gain knowledge day by day and be an ocean. Join us again in the journey of research tomorrow at 10 a.m. Stay home, stay safe, and don't forget to stay updated. Thank you.
All the participants kindly fill the today's feedback form.